Hello and welcome to my workshop. So today we're going to be taking the Toyota Tacoma body I just finished up and a borrowed chassis from a friend and making front and rear bumpers. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing I do when I get these making these bumpers is to kind of come up with the kind of metal I'm going to be using. So here I have just a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch in flat stock, and I just kind of grab that and get an idea of what I'm looking for. I ended up going with the 1/2 inch, and right here I'm just laying out the design for the bumper and trying to figure out where I want to cut away. So I take a thin cutoff blade and I just take some light scores down the where I've marked, and then I come back and I can press harder and cut through and I get the final shape I'm looking for. So I make some successive cuts, and that just allows me to close this thing up and get the right angle. And then I can come back and silver solder the gap up. Okay, so I got the first cuts finished on the bumper. So what I was able to do is take some 1/2 inch square tubing, and I made a cut along the back, along the the top, made some slice cuts into the into this top piece here, and then took some this is a safety seal 45. It's a silver solder, or silver bearing solder, I guess technically. Solder or braze, whatever you want to call this, joint together, and you stand it back, and it's like it's one piece. So the idea is this is going to fit roughly in this general vicinity right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of this key stock here, and I'm going to bolt this on to this piece here, and then I'll pull it off the truck, and you'll have the key stock moving forward like that on both sides. And what that key stock will do is it will rest and become the bottom mount for this bumper. So essentially it'll be sitting about like that, and that'll give me just about the right height I need for the bumper. And then I'll have a place, then I'll be able to take and attach a piece of thin metal in the front going down to give it a that brush guard look in the front, and that'll cover up this this look in the front here. And so to mount the bumper on, you'll just slide it back and just put 2 screws right down through where the set screws would normally go in to hold the stock bumper on. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. So let's get to that. So the hardest part about silver soldering is coming up with the jig. That's where a welder would be great. You can just kind of tack it in place, but I don't have that. So what I'm having to do here is make a jig out of a scrap piece, and then bolt on the little legs that would run off to come up to the body. And again, just making more of those cuts and getting that bend in, so I can then silver solder that back together. So the most important thing when you're silver soldering is to get the joint that you're going to be working on super clean. So I do that first, and then I come back with the flux, and then you want to heat that up, and you got to heat it up evenly. You don't want to go too hot too fast, or too much at one spot. You will burn the flux, then you have to kind of start over again. So this bumper has this plate that runs straight down in the front, and the winch fairlead comes through. So I'm just taking a piece of thicker brass. I made some scores along the backside to make it a nice clean bend, and just bending this up to match the contour of the bumper. It does take quite a bit of effort to get these things lined up just right. You have to not only check to make sure the angle is right, but the angle is matching side to side. So now I got the little piece cut down, and I'm just going through and trying to get this thing silver soldered to the bottom. This is a part where I almost really could use my oxy map gas, but I tend to be always out of oxygen, and it goes through really quickly, so I just end up using a little more heat and take a little bit longer. So now just moving on to the rear, again just starting off with slicing down the 1/2 inch square tubing and getting the profile, the shape you're looking for. The rear bumper is a lot simpler. It just has the one little small turn at the end, and so I just kind of get those cut and scored and bent into shape, and then silver soldered back together. Okay, so the front bumper is pretty close to being done, and so what I ended up doing was taking this 1/2 inch steel and bending, cutting, brazing or silver soldering this back together. Added this little brass piece on the bottom. I still got to come back in and put in the fairlead. So I'll just the original one has the winch tucked in behind. It's about as low as I can get this winch the way this is set up. But I'll get the fairlead right here and drill a little hole. And I believe there was some marker lights right here, so I can probably find something to put right there. And I think that'll be finished up for the front. And then we'll have to turn around and start working on the rear. Alright, so let's get to that. So here, just adding some extensions down the side of the bumper. I realized after I had the thing put together that he wanted it a little bit longer and extending all the way to the wheel well, and then actually cut the body back. So just doing that here, and getting a little bit of cleanup also for putting in the mounts to mount this thing up to the truck. Yeah, so right now I'm just making some successive holes in here, just making those the drill, coming back and kind of cleaning up with the Dremel and getting that that slot opened out so the cable would be able to come through on the opening for that fairlead. It's where it's mounted up on the real bumpers. So the rear had a hitch, and what I ended up doing a while back is I made a hitch receiver out of some 1/2-inch square tubing, much like I did with the bumper. So basically I cut two sides down, pushed them back together, and made an opening, and then just kind of cleaned it all back up. So I was able to use some of that material I'd used before, and put that hitch on. So just getting a hole drilled to mount that receiver up. So just a couple little final details. The little lights, I'm painting them up an orange color, and then test fitting everything on the body and just make sure everything fits. Alright, so finished up with the bumpers. I think they turned out pretty good. They just a coat of black satin paint on here. Added in the little lights here on the each side. They're non-functional, but I think they still look pretty good. The winch roller here is from a 3 racing winch, but this is just in here for spacing. But I was able to cut that off the front of the bracket that comes off of one of these, and then mount that with some really small hardware on the front. So that's where the winch line will come out. And this is a replica of his real bumper, so that's how his is set up. I've tried to make this as close as possible as what the actual bumper looks like. The back here, what ended up doing was cutting the body right along where this bumper extends forward. And so this body isn't mounted yet, but it's just kind of resting up here. And made this bumper, which runs around. Like I said, this is a replica of what he has on the back of his bumper. It had a trailer hitch, so I put a little piece on the bottom here, and just to show you how it would work, I have the axial trailer hitch on there, so you can have one little screw, pop that out, and then the whole thing comes off, and then you could tow a trailer if you wanted. But I'm really happy with how this thing turned out. It's a nice little addition to this body. I think it works really well. The best part, it looks pretty much close to, or if not exactly, what his real truck is, so that's going to be really neat to see once it's all done. A lot of other fun things coming up in the near future. Looking forward to getting to some of those. But until then, we'll see you on the rocks.